Okay, so what is the component? So components are generally, which means in general, I can say that if you see a text boxes, right, in a HTML form, input type equal to text, so that is a component. I can say, which means in React, I can say that that can be a component because it's going to return your HTML elements and gonna have some kind of validations, or it can just return, do some kind of functions. So which have a set of code which will be embedded in an HTML code is generally known as component. It can be reusable. Let's say if you have input tag, so it can be reused in any number of files or any number of project you're working on. It's gonna return the same result. So likewise in React, this component means the same thing, which means that it's like a function or a class. A component can be a function or a class. Generally, it's going to return HTML elements. Okay, which means that it achieves the reusable of codes. So you can able to reusable that particular component, which means in the tag, in the Angular tag. So you can able to reuse in your applications to just render the particular set of your elements, what has been written behind that component tag. So this, which means that it is have two types, generally component types or class components and function components. So class components in general, it will be having a class followed by class name, the same thing. So every component will have the first character name will be in capital letter. It's going to implement the React DOM. So it's going to extend the React DOM thing. So whereas function, it's generally going to return a your HTML element. Intern class, you have to extend that React DOM and you have to return, and you will have a render method extra. So this render method internally will be having all your HTML codes. Whereas in function, it's simple. It's like normal JavaScript function name, and it's going to return. In return, you can able to have your HTML element. So there are two types of function component. So one is class and function. So in general, we'll be using function components throughout our applications. So which means that it's been widely popular right now. So class comp, because it have much simpler syntaxes than the class, and everybody can understand. So right now the industries are popular using the function components across thing. So yeah, this is the thing. A function component is just a plain JavaScript function, accepts props as an argument, returns React element. Whereas a class component requires you to extend from React component and create a render function with the React element. So I will just show you the example. See, this is a functional component. As I say that this function generally gonna take a function, and this will have as first name as your this thing, and it can be used across your function. Let's say this is the tag, this is the component. Let's say if I'm having a welcome, so I'm just rendering. So if you see that this welcome is your component name, right? So this welcome generally has a proper props. Props means that which is the thing where you can able to pass a value from one component to another. Let's say this function component is a one component, right? So this welcome component is another component. I'm just rendering that welcome component inside the app component. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm just passing that Sarah, that is Chal and Edity to this name. So where what is when it has been rendered, so it will just go to this function component, and it was going to return a h1 tag with the actual name. What this name and this name will be same. Let's say I'm just creating another one. Let's say I'm just creating a test property, right? So hi, okay. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to have a this props displayed. That is, I'm going to get the props of test. Okay, so if I'm gonna see, you can able to see that your this thing has been rendered. This hi Sarah hi has been rendered. What's the thing is, I'm just creating a props test, and I'm just I'm just pausing it to my welcome component, and this props will be helpful for just sharing a data across the component. So that is what I'm doing. I'm just sharing this hi data using this test. I'm just assigning to a property called test, and this property can be you can able to get this property in your welcome component. So that is the process of this function component and this property also. I mean, okay, so generally the same thing. So you will be having a root element and this app component will be rendered in your root element. So if you see that the function component syntax is much so simple in terms of class component. So I can show you the class component. Let's say this is your class component. See, it's gonna extend component classes from React library. That is your React. So, and what is the thing is, you see that it's gonna have a render method, and it's gonna inside render method, it's gonna have a return functions. Okay, so this is what generally this thing can it will be doing. Let's say here we'll be using state. So in function as well as class component, we can use state. Okay, this state is nothing but we can able to pass the data to your HTML element within the same component. Let's say I'm just passing this React. Okay, so I'm just making this a best. So if you see that it automatically re-renders your React applications and just print this state within here. Let's say if I'm gonna create another more one thing. Okay, that's what I'm gonna create is. Okay, so what I'm gonna create is I'm gonna add another thing. Country as my state. Okay, I'm gonna print India. If you see that I can able to pass the value that is an object within the state. Country is my object property name. So this state generally serves the purpose of just passing the valid value from within your component to your HTML element. So this is where state is generally being used. State generally maintain the data of within your component, which means that if any change in your data, automatically just re-render your applications. Let's say if I'm just gonna change India to Indian. Okay, so automatically it just re-renders the data alone. It never re-renders your whole applications. It just update your data alone. So generally, this is what state takes care of across your React applications. So then. Okay, so then we're going to see about life cycle of a component. So life cycle is generally a predefined method. So let's say a kind of a method which will be executed when a React component is going to render in your HTML browser, which means in your browser. Okay, so each React has a life cycle. So you can able to manipulate during this life cycle. Let's say if you want to load any data, so you can able to load the data inside that method, and it will be loaded at the time of rendering the applications. So this kind of method are very much helpful for just doing some operations before rendering in the HTML element to your browser. Okay, there are three phases of life cycle are there. So one is mounting, updating, and unmounting. Mounting is nothing but so your React component HTML elements are put into your DOM. So that phase is called as mounting, which means that you are just appending that HTML into your DOM element. The DOM is nothing but your browser. You are just appending all your React element to your browser. So that phase is known as mounting. Updating is nothing but, let's say if I'm going to say change any data. So it's right now showed you, right. So I just change the state data. The state data generally just gonna call your update method. That's the update phase. This phase generally update only the particular changed data, particular change element. So it never re-render completely. So where that is where updating phase comes in. Unmounting is nothing but the vice versa of this one. So when you are appending, you are just making this calling it mounting phase. When you are removing a DOM from a removing HTML element from a DOM, then it's this phase is known as unmounting phase. So this is the thing. React has 4 built-in methods. There are many built-in methods. Many means actually I think 6. I will show you that methods. So if you have, let's say, if you see that there are constructor component will mount, component did mount, component will update, component did update, should component update. So component will receive props. So these are the and render. So these are the some of the other methods. So we'll be just going through about this 4 methods, because this will be maximum will be involving this method only. So this will be using rarely, which means that it's all about purpose of your applications. Let's say if you want to do something on update of a component, so at the time you need to do this code here. So this is what the life cycle of an React application comes in. So constructor is nothing but it's kind of a class name. So it generally will be your class. Every class will be having a constructor. This constructor will have a props as an argument, which generally gonna call all your props. So which means props generally it involves in exchanging data between different components. So when a data has been transferred to your props, it every time so you will be your constructor will be loaded for a component, right? So at that time that automatically that props will receive that data from your another component, and it's gonna just consume the data within your component. So constructor is the first one to be get called and get derived state from props. This is nothing but if you want to do any kind of state or props actions before the component is going to render, so you can use this component to do that. And render is nothing but kind of rendering your HTML element within your React component. So render will be called at that time. And component did mount. So I said right. So did mount. So whether the component has been mounted to your DOM element. So there's a method called component did mount. At the time you want to do any kind of operations, you can able to do that within this method. So this is where the detail about constructor. So when a component is initialized and it is a natural place to set up initial state and other state initial values, which means I said right. So if you want to initialize the value, or if you want to call a method which have to load the data at the start of the application or start of the component, so you can make use of this constructor. Okay, so generally I said so it will have a props as an argument. So it will be calling a super props before anything else, because this will initiate the parent constructor method and allows the component to inherit method from its parent React component, which means we'll be having that React.component, right? So we'll be having this one. Okay, so it will be helpful for inheriting that parent thing from your React, this actual component of your React library. So that only will be calling that super prop. Super means generally a super class. Okay, that is the base class of this particular class. Generally, this base class of this will be your component only. So you will be extending your props here to consume the props within your applications. Okay, so as I said, it's called right before rendering the element. So actually, before rendering element, this will be get derived state from props will be called. And actually, it is a natural place to set the state of an object. Let's say if you want to set a state of an object, what I have done it right. So I'm just doing it in constructor. But if you want to do it after the constructor, you want to call a certain data to a state, then you can use this method, get derived state from props. So this method generally you can able to set a state and properties value within this method of an component, and render is nothing but your this one. So I said right. So the render will be having all your HTML components. So HTML element as well as your React components. This allows a React component, and this div is your HTML components. So generally it's gonna have all your things. And component date mount. Actually, I said right. So component date mount is a method where before it will be called the component's been rendered, which means that if the component is rendered, so at that time this method will be called. So you can able to have any kind of functions or any kind of logics if after the component has been rendered. Let's say if you want to check any validations after the component has been rendered, so you can have this validation again before, which means without executing event. Let's say on load of a form, so you want to just execute a component, you want to execute a validation kind of a thing, right? So at that time you can use that, because it will be it will be executed after the component has been rendered to your browser. So you can make use of that one. Okay, so and the state is nothing but I said right. So it's a built-in state object. State objects were a property, which means that where you can able to what exchange data between your component within your component, which means that you can able to pass a data to your HTML elements. The state will be much helpful across the React applications. So if you see that, I have already showed you, right? So which means that I can able to access this property, which state property inside your HTML element. So if any changes to state, it automatically re-render your React applications, and it will be displaying that the updated data in your browser. So that is the state thing. And props are generally, which means that props is helpful for passing in data from your one component to via another component, which means that using an HTML attribute. HTML attribute is nothing but, as I showed you, right? This is an HTML attribute. So you can able to pass this one, and it will be rendered it will be rendered in your browser. So I will show you that state thing. So state is also another example here. If you see that I'm going to change the state alone. Let's say I change state hello BestEnlist and hello React. What I'm doing is I'm going to write a on click event of this button within your render function, that is your return functions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a ternary operator check. Okay, so if name equal to React, your name is nothing but I'm going to get it from your user state. Okay, so user state is, I'm going to get it from user state. I'm using that user state. I'm going to get the state name. I'm going to set the value to that name. Okay, so what I'm doing is hello name. Okay, so if name is equal to React, on click of this button, so what I'm going to do is React, I want to set BestEnlist. Okay, else I'm going to set React. So hope you guys know this is the ternary operator, right? So this is the condition checking, and this is your first statement execution, and this is the second statement executions. Okay, so on base of this, if you see that I'm going to change the state. Okay, your state data alone get rendered. So this is where state comes in into a picture for your React applications. Okay, so if you see here, okay, so what is the thing is, you can able to know which is the first thing has been called. So if you see that the before component get created, so right, I'll just put this console here. If you see that your first thing after your application loads, okay, your constructor is called first. After that, before component get created, okay, your component will mount method will be called first. Okay, and inside render, after that, what is the thing is, your render method has been called straight away. So inside render, and after that, what is the thing is, component did mount will be called. Your component has been mounted. So this is the basic kind of lifecycle method will be called at the time of loading in React applications. And this component will be will also be called at the time of updating a particular data or kind of re-rendering of a React thing. Let's say if you have just added a particular HTML input, so at the time it won't re-render a whole part of your web page. What it will do, it will track the changes and it will have it in your shadow DOM. Okay, so and it will just append that to your shadow DOM, and that shadow DOM will be drawn across your React applications, which means it will just reflect that particular change alone. So at that time, this component will update will this method will be executed. Okay, so and did update is something after a component has been updated, which means that after that has been rendered, it will call that this method, like it is like component did mount. Okay, so did update did mount at the time of refreshing, that is starting an application. Did update will at the time of updating your component elements. Okay, so this is and component update, this method something like which this two method has been executed, right? So after that, this should component update will be called. Okay, so which if this component is updated, Okay, what should we do? We can have actions like we can define this state. Hey, okay, so I can able to change the state, or I can do some kind of operations. If it is updated, I can able to do some kind of operations. At the time, I can use should component update method to do that. And the component will receive props. Props is nothing but asset, right? So it's kind of receiving a component, different component property value to this component. So at that time, this component is receiving a value. This method will be executed. So you can do some kind of operation within this props. Let's say if someone is, I'm having an age component, right? I'm just passing an age. So I need to check whether that age is greater than 18 or not. If 18, I need to do some kind of logics, and less than 18, I don't do some kind of logics, right? So at that time, passing from one component to this component, so at that time it will reach here, and I can able to have that logic here. So this is the where component will receive props will work. So on render is nothing but the same thing. Render is kind of from the class component is going to render or your HTML element. So to your shadow DAM, and after that it will be reflected to your browser. So this is a kind of overview or glimpse of the properties or the functionalities what the React has been using to create components. Fine. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your kind cooperation.